Next up, it's our weekly segment Movie Spotlight, reviewing the latest releases at the Korean box office and online. And with me now for that are our two film critics. First, we have Jason Bechervaise to my right. Jason, hello.
Hello. Pleased to be here again. It's an
yes, it's
honor.
good to see you. It's great to have you here with us. And we have to my left, Darcy Paquet as well. Hello to you too, Darcy.
Yeah, good to see you.
Okay, this week there is a major new Hollywood release, and that is DC Films' new superhero movie, Black Adam, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. But it has widely been panned by critics, so we thought we'd save it from more criticism and instead talk about a release that we didn't get a chance to talk about recently. It's a movie that everyone is talking about, or has been talking about over the last year. It's called Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And it was finally released here in Korean cinemas last week after creating quite a buzz in the US and the West earlier this year. It has the same slightly unwieldy title in Korean. So Jason, can you tell us more about it first?
Yeah, so Darcy and I were looking at the films this week, and there's quite a few releases, and Everything Everywhere All at Once was released last week, but since we didn't get a chance to talk about it, it felt right and proper to discuss it, because it is a film that is pretty wild. It's directed and written by the Daniels, Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert, the duo that brought us the comedy Swiss Army Man that was released in 2016. I still remember it being very, very well received in Bucheon a few years ago. And Everything Everywhere has, it's essentially become mainstream. It's a low-budget film. It's produced by A24, the company behind Moonlight and Minari. And it's become the highest-grossing film of all time, generating $100 million at the box office. It's also generating Oscar buzz, with the momentum building for its lead, Michelle Yeoh. I think she's pretty much guaranteed to land a nomination.
I would love to see her win Best Actress.
Yeah, no, it'd be awesome, right? And yeah, screenwriting and a few other categories. It's a film that's been warmly embraced in cinemas, rather than online.
Yeah.
Now, the plot. Now, this is going to get quite tricky. And so some of you... I was reading the plot on Rotten Tomatoes. It literally is just one line. Some of our listeners will have heard that it's kind of multi-dimensional, which it is. It focuses essentially on three characters. Evelyn, played by Yeoh, and Wayman, played by... Kwan. He plays the boy in Indiana Jones Temple of Doom. And they play a couple, and they emigrate to the United States from China and own a laundrette, and they have a daughter, Joy, played by Stephanie Hsu. Now, the film is essentially split into three parts, so Everything, Everywhere, and All at Once. But All at Once is very, very brief at the end. And things go a bit weird and strange when the couple head to the local tax office, the IRS, after they are audited. And Evelyn discovers when Alpha Raymond, now this is a version of himself from a parallel universe. Now he appears, and that, essentially they realize that different universes exist, but the multiverse is being threatened by the alpha version of Joy. And what essentially begins is a journey of discovery, of love and family, and they're trying to rekindle a love that they once had and struggling. And there's also this very it's a long attempt to file their taxes without getting arrested, and it also stars Jamie Lee Curtis as the over scrupulous IRS inspector. So great cast. A bit confusing, but that's the whole point.
Okay, so Darcy, Jason has attempted bravely to sum it up for us. Sounds like a roller coaster of a film, multi-dimensions, alpha versions of characters, tax filings. It sounds like quite an adventure.
It is. And, by now we're familiar with the multiverse. We've had Spider-Man and the multiverse and others. And apparently they started writing it before all those came out. And so they were quite upset watching all these films being released before them. But actually, in some ways, that's not the most interesting part of this. I think that just the freewheeling nature of the comedy is something that felt quite fresh. And it reminded me of Hong Kong comedies. And, the Hong Kong industry isn't what it used to be, but, they had great comedies back in the 1990s by Stephen Chow. And, when you first kind of look at this movie and you read a bit of the synopsis or you read a review, it sounds very quirky. And there are a lot of American movies, black comedies, or that are self-consciously quirky, and I tend to have a real negative reaction to those kinds of films. But I love this film, and so I guess what I would say is if you hate quirky, then give this a try, because it's kind of a slightly different tone.
Sure, but what do you love about it?
It is crazy, though. I mean, partly it's just the thrill of not knowing where it's going and seeing it go in places that are much more wild than you would expect. Some of the jokes in it are great. I mean, there's something related to the movie Ratatouille, which just makes me laugh every time I think about it.
Yeah, that's really great.
There's the everything bagel joke, which I won't attempt to explain, but which is also just hilarious. Kind of. Hey. The very concept is hilarious. So,
sure.
I mean, building off of that, and then all the characters as well.
Jason, a film occasionally comes along that doesn't expect to connect in the way it does with audiences. And as we said, this was a huge hit in the West. $100 million at the box office for a film that had a relatively modest budget of just 25
post-COVID or COVID world.
Yes.
So yeah, you know, it's a film that's being celebrated. It's interesting how it very much focuses, you know, on the Chinese diaspora as well, and that's something that's been celebrated as well. I mean, the screenwriter is absolutely fantastic, giving these characters, you know, agency. And so often when you're talking about immigrants, is often in quite a negative way, looking at their problems. But this film just feels really wild, fresh, imaginative. And in a world of franchises and reboots and, you know, sequels and all the rest of it, this is exactly the kind of film that Hollywood needs. I was looking at some of the comments online by Korean filmmakers as well, and they were actually asking, you know, whether a film like this could be financed in Korea. The fact of the matter is, probably not. Kind of similar reaction to Kingsman, you know, all those years ago. Again, really wacky film. And yeah, it's entertaining, it's comical. And the storytelling is really interesting. It does get a bit confusing, but I think what it does do is it basically, you know, you get the credits go up, and you're like, I need to see this again, because there's so much that I need to kind of fully kind of understand, and in order to do that, you need to kind of go back for seconds and thirds and fourths. And a lot of people I know have gone to see it several times, and kind of like, you know, Christopher Nolan and, you know, his films, Inception and Memento, and the kind of conversations they were generating, and now he's become, you know, this big Hollywood, you know, blockbuster filmmaker who can do what he likes. And a little bit of Matrix in there as well. And so yeah, it's fresh, but yeah, at the same time, I think audiences will really, well, they have done. They've really embraced it in a really, really big way.
Sure. Darcy, I have heard, though, that it has split some audiences, that they have found it perhaps too quirky or too zany. Yeah,
it's true. I mean, definitely it's a film that it appeals to certain tastes, but perhaps not all tastes. You know, I would argue that, you know, despite the zaniness, like there is, in the characters, kind of a lot of, the relationships are interesting. And in particular, Michelle Yeoh, I mean, she became famous as an action star.
Yeah, they play with a persona, don't they? Like, she's just like this older kind of woman, and she's aging, and all the issues that come with that. And then yeah, she kind of starts kind of at certain moments in the movie, she starts, you know, doing a bit of the martial arts that she's you know, she's synonymous with.
But to me, I mean, she shows kind of a vulnerability in the film that I thought was her most appealing characteristic, and I think that's, like, those moments I think are the ones that are kind of going to stick out.
Well, no matter what one thinks about the film, the fact that an original underdog film like this has seen such success is certainly worth celebrating, and hopefully the Oscars will see fit to reward it in some form or another as well. Okay, let's move on to our next review. Now, there are a couple of Korean horror films out this week, and the one we'll be looking at today is The Other Child, or Mihok in Korean, directed by Kim Jin-young. Darcy, I understand that the horror season is usually in the summer in Korea, but perhaps the Korean market is taking Halloween into more consideration as well nowadays. But anywho, what can you tell us about this film?
Yeah, I mean, this is a film by a debut director. There are actually a couple horror films coming out this week, but we decided to focus on this one. It's set in a house in a remote area, and there's a family, a pastor and his wife. They have 3 children, and after a tragedy with their 4th child, they decide to adopt a new boy. And he can see ghosts. But, it sounds at first sort of like a, Sixth Sense type of setup. I mean, in a way, it's the fact that he can see ghosts isn't that big. It isn't that central to the plot. I mean, it's what drives a bit of the story forward, but, it's not trying to scare you with so much with the ghosts. It's more about the family dynamics and the fact that everybody seems to be cracking up a little bit in this family. So it's that psychological tension, and then they add the supernatural element on top of it to kind of, bring it to the next level, I guess.
Right, Jason, last week we talked about a film that involved religion, shamanism, although that was, of course, a comedy drama rather than horror. But yes, religion, the church seems to play a central role in this film, right? But when we say horror, is this a psychological horror or something more, should we say, spiritual?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. Certainly the female protagonist in the film, the wife, the mother character, she's struggling with some psychological issues. She's lost a child, and they've adopted this other child. But at the same time, there's this kind of spiritual element. You've seen The Exorcist and all the rest of it. And I think Korean films certainly horror films have really excelled in the way they deal with kind of the psychological and this film in that sense is really interesting in how we kind of try, certainly the way the female protagonist is portrayed, we get a sense as to the difficulties she's facing, and that's not very easy to do as a filmmaker or an actor. And so that's one of the aspects I liked about it. And also, religion, as I mentioned last week, has been something that is quite often tackled in Korean films, but it's not something that's really, I mean, in terms of the criticism or looking at it from a kind of critic's perspective or even academic's perspective, it's something that's often overlooked. And you've seen films like The Wailing, Priest, there was Possessed a few years ago, even some of Kim Ki-young's early films. And so that's something that I'm personally quite interested in. And this film kind of, you got the kind of mixture of both, and I think it works quite well. Actually, this is better than I was expecting. It's well acted, it's well put together. Sure, we've seen some of this before, but this was a bit of a surprise. And I asked Darcy before I got into the studio, I was like, what do you think of the film? And you seem to think, the same, that the film is actually better than you were expecting.
I mean, I too walked in with very low expectations.
The trailer is not particularly encouraging, I thought.
Yeah, I didn't watch the trailer, but I mean, these days, there are a whole lot of kind of low budget horror films that are being made, kind of low profile horror films, and very few of them kind of rise up to attract very much attention. And I do try to give every film an equal chance, but yeah, I mean, as I was watching this film, it did pull me in. Like it doesn't have too many unexpected twists, and I will say that the ending isn't like super entertaining. It's not kind of a thrill ride type of horror film.
Okay. Whereas the other horror film out this week, that kind of seems more of a genre kind of heavy driven film, scares.
Devil in the Lake.
Yeah, exactly. This is not really a full-on scary film. It's quite unsettling, but I wouldn't say it's scary. It's not like you've got ghosts kind of like hiding underneath the bed or in cupboards.
But it is effectively creepy.
It is creepy, yeah.
Because a lot of films try to be creepy and then just aren't. But this one...
it does, and it does it gradually as well.
So it's a pleasant surprise. It's called The Other Child, or Mihawk, and it's out now in cinemas. We'll wrap it up there for this week's movie spotlight, gentlemen. Jason and Darcy, thank you as always for your reviews, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having us.
See you.